Hello, welcome to Life and Soul.
Good evening. Nice to see everybody. How are you?
Are you asking me or are you asking our viewers, Andy?
Oh, I was asking the general million population we have watching us at the moment, I thought.
Excellent. Well, do tell us, folks. Feel free to post comments, ask us questions, tell us how your evening's going. Hi, Jill. Good to see you.
Nice to see you, Jill.
So this is week 2 of Life and Soul. Last week, we were considering the question, if God made the world, why is it so messed up?
Yeah.
We were thinking about creation, got quite deep quite early on, really, didn't we?
I know. I mean, so unlike us. You maybe, but not us.
Thinking about creations, we talked a bit about creationism, and I said, don't have a problem with evolution personally. To me, it's not incompatible with believing that God made the world through evolution or whatever. But then we moved on quite quickly to think about the things that go wrong in the world, the fact that creation is a beautiful thing, but we're not perfect works of art. Our bodies go wrong, for example, and we thought a bit about how we make sense of that.
Yeah.
So tonight, Andy, you were asking for some kindness stories.
I know. Yeah, I want to start with I've got a couple myself. I know you've got some, but if anyone's got a kindness story, what I mean is when someone's been kind to somebody else, or maybe actually kind to you, and you go, "Oh yeah, that was really good." So we'll kind of go over this. Can I say first of all that I think human beings can be amazing, darling. Fantastic. You have been struck by the beauty of something, maybe a piece of amazing music, or a piece of art, or amazing sporting achievement. Maybe a young lady winning tennis, something like that. Basically, the sheer perfection of something. And maybe that somebody has helped you out when you've needed someone to be kind to you. Here's a couple of kindness stories which I quite like. Leaving a shop, a man returned to his car only to discover he'd locked his keys and mobile phone inside. You ever done that sort of thing, Em? Locked your phone and keys in your car?
I haven't. I dread to think what words would come out of my mouth if I did.
Yeah. Well, there was the teenager riding by, and he saw the man kicking his tires and using a few choice words, shall we say. And he says, "What's wrong, mate?" And he goes, "I've locked my keys and phone in the car, and I can't even phone my wife because she's got the other set of keys, and we live like 7 miles away. Give me your address, mate." And the teenager went off and came back half an hour later after traveling 7 miles there, 7 miles back, and bought the spare keys to get in. The man offered him some money. He said, "Let's just say I needed the exercise, shall we?" Then, like a cowboy in the movies, he went off into the sunset. That's a kind of kind thing, isn't it? That's a good thing.
That's incredibly kind. Yeah, doing that for a complete stranger. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I heard a story as well about a man who was shopping, and he was 12 quid short of his shopping, and began to take stuff out of his bags. And the person behind actually said to him, "Don't worry about it. Here's 20 quid. I will pay the balance." He said, No, you can't do that." And the man said, "Let me tell you a story. My mother's in hospital, seriously ill with cancer at the moment. And every time I go in, I take her flowers. And she says, 'Forget the stupid flowers. Do something good for somebody. So here are my mother's flowers. I will pay for your shopping.'" I love that.
Yeah, that's a great story. I really like that one.
Yeah. Have you got any kind of stories, Em?
Yeah, I mean, a little one and a big one, really. It's a little thing, but it actually meant a huge amount to me at the time. I was going to see a show in Basildon. I was driving a couple of members of my family. I was running late, as I often am in my life. And I got there, and you know how these days you get used to paying everything with a card.
Yeah.
But it was one of those car parks which at that time, was cash only. And it's like, I didn't have any cash for the car park, and there wasn't a shop nearby, so I was thinking I'm gonna have to go to a shop and get cash out and buy something and get change and come back. And I was running late already, and I was having like a minor meltdown. And then this guy and his wife were just, walking up to pay for their own parking, and they're like, "Oh, here you go, love," and he just paid for it. And okay, it wasn't a lot of money, but actually he really, really helped me out at a time when I was just, going into meltdown. bigger one for me, really. I mentioned last week that I studied theology. I went to college to train to become a minister, and
Yeah.
it was an incredible privilege, but also really, really expensive. I'd already done a degree earlier on when I was 18, and so I didn't qualify for a student loan, and a lot of people from the church I attended at that time, as well as people not in the church, supported me financially through my time at theological college. So I had 3 years not working. I actually had 2 years before that also not working, when I was kind of trying to test out, am I called to become a minister? And what quite often happens is that people will work for free, will volunteer while they're trying to sense this out. So I didn't have any income for 5 out of 6 years, and people supported me. And I had retired people giving me £10 a month out of their pensions.
Oh,
you know and it kind of changes the way you think about your money and your possessions and how you use them. That incredibly humbling.
Yeah. People can be incredibly kind, can't they?
Mm.
You know, but of course, kindness is only half the story, isn't it? Many of us have done things, I think, that we bitterly regret. Well, hang on a second. Lots of kindness to me as a family last year when Steve is Jill's husband, I guess, was in hospital with COVID. So there we go. I'll jump in here, basically. There we go. Thank you for that. But I guess many of us have done things that we bitterly regret. If only I'd not done this or I'd done that. Why couldn't I just keep my stupid mouth shut? And of course, being British, we have a euphemism for bitterly regret, don't we? Something I am not proud of, we tend to say, trying to maybe make it seem not quite as bad. Major understatement, I should think. Of course, there's some people who think they are pretty good people. They've not murdered anybody. They've not stolen anything. They try and do the right thing all the time. And by and large, they set a standard, and often they actually do attain it. But can we say, just for tonight, and for maybe one night only, that we're not perfect? All of us have done something. I'm just thinking about things in which I wish I could just forget some of them over the years. But none of us get it right all the time, do we? If anybody does, I want to watch them and see what they do. So there we go. But things can get a lot darker than that on occasion, can't they, as well? Sometimes we deliberately break our own rules out of our own interest. And sometimes things we think are okay at the time, with hindsight, turn out to be wrong. Now, I'm somebody who opens their mouth and puts their foot in it. It just comes out, and I think, why did I ever say that? Why did I even think that? I don't believe it. I just said it. And of course, when it's out there, isn't it? And it can be actually very difficult. Okay, and think about this: the end of time, and you're sitting in a cinema. There's only you sitting in a lovely plush seat, and a voice booms out, "Welcome to the film of your life." On the screen, everything you ever did, everything you ever said, and everything you ever thought. And you have to sit there and you have to watch it, and there's no popcorn. Then a second showing, which includes all the characters involved watching with you. So all those people you dissed and thought wrong things about, including all those involved with your secret thought life. And let's be honest, that's when it gets a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Now, the reality is, some of these things are going to be fantastic. The time when I won a trombone competition, for example, there were only 3 of us in the competition, I hasten to add, but I came first. So proud of that little trophy. But even things that we're not so proud about, those moments, those attitudes, those people we've hurt when we've been rude to somebody, but we don't generally talk about our faults, our feelings, our failings, or our weaknesses. We prefer to discuss the positives or make excuses, maybe point to other people and how it was their fault, or we can try and blame somebody else. Now, the old-fashioned word for this, mistakes we make, is of course sin. But in our society, sin means something which is quite desirable, like a second cream cake. I remember the time we were out with friends and we just had our ice creams, and they said, "Would you like a second ice cream?" And I'd never ever had a second ice cream before. Of course, I'd never do that now. Of course, sins are something which, if you are a Slimming World fanatic, as I have been over the years, means something else, isn't it? You're allowed so many sins every day. But I think the word sin probably belongs in the past. Sin is ice cream, risky, a little bit of fun maybe. Somebody said to me, Anne Summers is a little bit sinful, isn't it? Sin is alluring, sin is appealing. Enjoyable mischievousness or mischievousness, depending on how you pronounce that word. Myself and my wife pronounce it differently, that's why I have to say that. And to raise questions about morality is a bit uptight, a bit of a killjoy, boring, religious, and probably a bit of a stinking hypocrite. And what are your thoughts so far on what I've been saying?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. I've heard it said that the Christian belief in sin, old-fashioned word, and I know we've got you and I. You're going to introduce us to a different way of thinking about it, because that word sin isn't very helpful, and it's got a lot of religious connotations, a lot of unhelpful connotations. But I've heard it said that that's the only empirically verifiable tenet of the Christian faith. In other words, that's the one thing Christians believe that is absolutely blatantly obvious when you look around you, the fact that human beings are not perfect. You know,
so we've got tax, death, and sin now. Is that what you're saying?
well, yeah, I mean, and I was thinking about humanism. I've got a lot of respect for humanists, massive respect for humanists. I don't know a lot about humanism, but from my understanding, humanists basically believe that there is no God, so we need to live our lives as well as we can and make things better for those around us. And so John Lennon's song "Imagine" is often very well, often part of there as a humanist anthem. You know, imagine there's no heaven. You know, imagine us living life in peace, no possessions, and so on. And it's great. As I said, I've got a lot of respect for humanists, but for me, the problem with humanism is that human beings are deeply flawed. I don't think we can live well without outside help. So I think I'd agree with you, Andy. I think while human beings are capable of great kindness, great heroism, wonderful things, and great beauty, we're also kind of messed up.
Yeah. So let's push this a bit further. Let's think about something a bit more serious than just a second cream cake, or having. Yeah, I like the fact that men are allowed 25 sins and women are only allowed 15 sins. Is that really sexist? Is that just a wrong thing? This is
Yes,
Slimming World we're talking. Just rub a bit in.
folks listening in, we're talking about Slimming World, which Andy and I have both been to. Yeah.
I just thought I'd go with that one, basically. Yeah. Thing is, we're talking more seriously here. We're talking about something called the human tendency to muck up, or we're going to call it HTMU. I know there should be another T in there, as my friend pointed out to me in the week, but HTMU, the human tendency to muck up. It's in our inclination to actually make mistakes.
Oh, I think we might have just lost you there, Andy, for a minute. You've just frozen on my screen. Hopefully we'll get you back shortly. It looks like we are still broadcasting, so I think, folks, you might be stuck with me there just for the time being. Oh yeah, David, our friend who helps us in the background, says, yeah, Andy has frozen. So hopefully we'll get you back, Andy. I'm just going to remove you from the broadcast while you play around with your internet. But so let's think about what Andy's just been saying. I've just been writing that up to put up on the screen. Oh, and it's just disappeared. Let me try it again. So Andy was talking about the human tendency to muck up. So let me pop that up. Human tendency to muck up. The idea that while human beings are wonderful in many ways, and I believe created by God, and I believe when God made us, God looked at us and said, I did a good job. Nevertheless, we get stuff wrong. We have a tendency, we're a bit like a dodgy supermarket trolley. We have a tendency not to go in a straight line. Got a comment from Jill here. Thanks, Jill. That's why people do horrible things, because we're all messed up. Things trigger us. We often react to things because of previous things we've done or that have been done to us. Thanks, Jill. Yeah, really helpful to bring in that dimension as well. It's not so much that we that we want to do things that are wrong. Sometimes we do, but sometimes we're triggered. There's unconscious motivation. There's things in our past that are unresolved, and we just make bad decisions. I'm going to try bringing Andy back in again. Andy, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, I don't know what, I got a power cut or something on my phone. No idea what happened. Hang on, I'll get rid of that one.
Okay. Right. Hopefully we'll get Andy back shortly. Andy, is this the right one?
It is. It is. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I have no idea what happened. The whole thing went dead on me suddenly.
Well, not to worry. We've just I just
That's
popped
2 weeks.
just popped up this comment from Jill, Andy. So just have a read.
Yep.
So I was just talking about the fact that we do things that are wrong sometimes because we're triggered by things, because there's things that are unresolved in our past, perhaps emotional reactions that we have. So, people talk about seeing red, don't they? Suddenly flying into a temper, and we don't always know what it is that's triggered it, and we can't always control that as much as we might want to.
I don't know how far you've got in the conversation, but HTMU is not just a personal thing, is it? Society has HTMU as well, and I guess that's come out in many ways. We can see the consequences of HTMU all over the place. Injustice in all of its many forms, sexism, racism, poverty, modern day slavery and people trafficking. Trying to accept one another for who we actually are with our race, religion and sexuality. Many of us struggle with all of those kind of things. And the environment, we've suddenly become aware of what's happening in our environment, how we've just been for many years plundering the planet with no regard for the future, basically for our own needs. So all of us, I guess, are in the same boat. All of us have this HTMU, both personally, society, if you like, and the human race. Now, Jesus talked about HTMU as well, and what he said was the things like HTMU come from what is going on inside us, and that makes it a disease of the heart. But the reality is that Jesus doesn't distance himself from the mess. He throws himself into it, and we're jumping ahead a bit now, but next week we're going to find out what God has actually done because of HTMU. So there we go.
Thanks, Andy. I'm glad we got you back. And
can't believe this. 2 weeks in a row we have problems with my laptop.
Yeah,
there we go.
Like as David said in the comments, unfortunately, folks, that's something that happens with live streaming. So we've said the HTMU is a tendency to do things wrong as individuals. We make poor decisions, but also the whole of our society, or our various societies around the globe, also have HTMU. And I was thinking about the Black Lives Matter protests that particularly kind of erupted last year, and I found myself really challenged by the things I was hearing about and reading about, because it kind of made me realize that actually racism is more than just individual acts of cruelty to Black people. It's about white supremacy, the fact that which is the air we breathe and the sea we swim in. The fact that I as a white woman don't really kind of have the luxury of not thinking too much about racism a lot of the time, and yet I benefit hugely from the appalling way in which Black people and people of colour have been marginalised, abused over centuries. It's just appalling. So it's not. So I guess I've sometimes thought, because I don't consider myself a racist, I don't do individual acts of racism. Nevertheless, there's this whole structure around us. The report after the appalling murder of Stephen Lawrence found that the police there was structural racism within the police force. It wasn't necessarily about individual racist officers, although I'm sure that there were. It was this idea that there was just these assumptions being made about young Black men, for example, that were so damaging. So human tendency to make muck up as individuals and as a collective.
Can I say also that as a cricket fan, and I'm one of those people who wakes up early in the morning to listen to the Test match at 4 o'clock, whatever it was, and the racism which has come out in some of the cricket teams has been scary. Absolutely so frightening. And some of my heroes are no longer my heroes, if you like. Things that have been uncovered. Very, 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 very difficult.
So we've been thinking theory, haven't we, Andy? We've been talking about the human tendency to muck up. But we also want to think a bit about spiritual practices in life and soul. And the practice of the day, folks, is community. Community is a spiritual practice. If you think about monasteries, for example, are a kind of classic example of religious community where people will choose to live together in a remote place and spend their days in prayer and in service. That's kind of an extreme form of community. But actually, community can take so many forms. A family is a community, isn't it? A group of people living together. And the interesting thing about community is I think it really reveals who we are as people. I think about that quote of Groucho Marx. I wouldn't want to join a club that would have me as a member. And I could kind of identify with that. You know, once you join a group, a family, even just living with one other person, join a church, join a club, you kind of, you have to get along with other people and you discover the kind of person you really are. Oh no, have we lost you again, Andy? I can see Andy's frozen again, which is a real shame. Hopefully we'll be able to get Andy back once more. Andy, if you just pop in the comments, which oh, I've got you back, but you're muted, sir. There we go. Are you on your phone now?
I'm on the phone. I'm going to go with this. Yeah.
Excellent. So well, it's good to have you, albeit on a smaller screen. So we were talking about community. What are your thoughts on community? Tell us before we lose you.
Yeah, again, goodness me. Well, community has suddenly happened in our street during lockdown. There's people, I think we mentioned this before on Life and Soul, but suddenly people who I'd never met, I now know. And we've shared ideas. And for example, today we had a parcel's gone missing and everyone now was commenting and trying to find this parcel that's gone down the street, which we'd never had just over 2 years ago. And we actually did a few activities during the year as well. The first Christmas, we turned our lights on at the same time and all the rest of it. People did some shopping. And I'm sure your street was the same. We had a WhatsApp group set up and it was amazing. It's not maybe quite as it was, but it's still there. And people actually still are talking to each other and made friends, which I think is actually good. It's actually good. But of course, life is not always perfect on WhatsApp. And sometimes people could get a little bit hot under the collar, not cover. That's a whole different thing. Hot under the collar, basically, with what is actually going on. So, yeah, I like that Groucho Marx quote. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because people I get on with really well, if you have a couple of days with them, like go away on holiday or something, suddenly you began to realise that your relationship is maybe not quite as good as it actually once was. And we often say at Christmas, for example, that 3 nights is enough and then the family can go away because otherwise you don't get on quite so well.
Yeah, living with one another is difficult, isn't it? I've got a comment here. Community reveals who we are as people. Why do I think it does? I mean, I'm thinking about just the fact that when it's not just you, when you have to negotiate space and with just even one other person, let alone a whole group of people, for example, in a church, you learn about yourself. You realize you're perhaps a bit more selfish than you thought you were, that you have your own preferences. I mean, one of the jokes about church is that we spend a lot of time arguing about music. You know, organ versus guitar. I like that song. I don't like that song. You know, I'm saying it in a joking way, but actually people get really upset about this stuff. And it's, what's tricky is that I think sometimes we have a really idealized idea of what community should be, whether that's in a church or any kind of community group or a family. You know, our family should be wonderful. We should all get along. Whereas actually the reality is family, community, church is about learning to rub along with one another when it's not easy, when it is difficult. And so community is not a lovely, fluffy thing. It's not about finding a community that is perfect and that will fit me, because we're all human beings. We will wind each other up. Oh, interesting comment here. Have you watched any reality TV program? The Apprentice, Love Island, Big Brother? People do reveal who they are as situations arise amongst each other. That's very interesting. Yeah, absolutely. When you put a whole load of people together, and they fall out.
Well, I've got three community principles, which I think: support, acceptance, and forgiveness, which I think can be, because we do want to support each other. That's really good. Accepting our differences and so on, even just different generations, but then being prepared to forgive one another. And we have to do that, because if we all got HTMU, there'll come a time when you have to forgive one another. And yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, Andy. But it's
I know,
been another
it's been interesting.
conversation. I've enjoyed it. Hope the folks listening have enjoyed it. Let me just get our contact details up. So there is a Life and Soul Facebook group, which you'd be very welcome to join, called Life and Soul Community. And we'd love to have you in that group. That's a private group, which it means if you want to post comments, but you don't want the whole of the internet seeing them, then you'd be welcome to join that group and carry on the conversation. We do have a Life and Soul email address, she says, looking for it. Here we go. We'd love to have your feedback. So you can go to life-and-soul.uk, or you can email us lifeandsoul@lrbc.org.uk. Or if you're happy to post comments publicly, just throw up some comments on YouTube or Facebook. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know any questions that you have. Maybe you want to challenge something that we said. We love that, don't we, Andy? We like a good discussion.
Yeah. Question I've got for next week is confession good for the soul? What do you think, folks? Is confession good for the soul?
Okay, so would you like people to tell us their answers to that question?
Yeah, absolutely. We can discuss it next week then, what different views we have. That'd be great.
Let me pop it up now. So, question for next week: is confession good for the soul? What do you think? Feel free to interpret that however you like. We'd love to know what you think. And it's been great. So we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye, folks.
Bye.